Hey everybody, Tom Cherry Holmes here with IRATA.ONLINE, and we have here a status report showing the latest progress for the Atari ST version of PLATOTERM, the Plato terminal used to access Plato online services such as IRATA.ONLINE and cyber1.org. For the purposes of demonstration here, I'm going to be showing a few example system configurations and taking you through the performance on all of these. So let's go ahead and get started. As our first system configuration that we have right here, we have a 520 ST running TOS 1.0. I mean literally, just look, bam, straight up, TOS 1.0. And it's got 512K of memory. There are no screen accelerators, no VDI accelerators, no AES acceleration, no patches. So this is all as stock on a 520 ST. Not even an SDFM, that would be 1.02. This is just a 520 ST. We go ahead, launch the program here, and once it loads up the floppy, we get the splash screen. And you'll see that we loaded in low resolution here, so we're looking at a 320 by 200 by 16 color screen. It still looks quite nice. It's using the 5x6 font that's borrowed from various other versions of PLATOTERM, most notably the Atari 8-bit and Commodore 64 version. But as we go along here, we'll see that we have a lot more colors that are typically available in those versions because of the ST's 512 color palette here. It's gone ahead and sent a little initialization string to the modem, said OK, and it's waiting for us to do something. So, of course, as you can see here, one of the biggest problems that I had while I was working on this particular version of PLATOTERM for the ST was solving the redraw problems. I essentially solved the redraw problem here by creating a replay method which replays the terminal buffer, which is cleared every time that the screen is actually cleared. As we can see right here, it decided to do a complete full screen redraw here, but even with 8 megahertz and no accelerators, the redraw performance was still quite fantastic. We have a couple of other menus here. Most notably, we have the settings menu, and all of that is pretty much hooked up as well. I'm currently set up, it's set up right now at 19200, but I've actually got the soft modem set up at 9600 baud, so I'll go ahead and switch that over. No big deal. And then, of course, you got bits and pieces for hang up and finally quit. We also have a few help windows which I can take and actually go into in just a moment. We have a little bit of status information over here on the right hand side. Since we've just started the program here, we're in TTY mode, which is just basically glass teletype mode. No control code interpretations other than the standard ASCII set. And we're at 9600 bits per second. So let's go ahead and we'll log into IRATA.ONLINE. We see our banner, and a few moments later we switched into Plato mode and we're looking at the IRATA.ONLINE login screen. I'll go ahead and log in with my username and group. If you haven't already signed up for an account, go ahead and sign up. It only takes a few moments. Apologies here. There will be some occasional glitches as I do this live. Please bear with me. And since I was last in the notes menu here, it puts me in the notes menu here. And you can see right here that in the low resolution mode, we get 16 colors that we can actually work with here that look quite nice. And it allows us to render the main menu pages on IRATA.ONLINE quite nicely. We can go ahead and look through the different notes files that I have running over here. Sure, no problem. We can take and go over to the Atari ST section. And we see some notes here by going into the Atari ST section. Cool, no problem. Let's go ahead and look at note number 4 here. Yeah, here's a note from Pete Fletcher. Okay. testing on his Atari ST. Now this was the previous version of the client, and I really want to thank Pete for helping me test and work through the bugs here. I think we're all going to be very happy with this particular version. I learned a lot about GEM and VDI in the process. Now, you might be wondering, okay, you see things like press lab for response, help for help, etc. One of the very useful bits and pieces is, of course, the Plato keyboard window here in the help menu. And you can see the different control key combinations that are used to get the various keys. Now, of course, you can use the shift key in combination with these to get shift key combinations as well. So we'll go ahead and hit shift back to get out of here. Shift control B. And we're back at the notes view. We hit shift back again. We find ourselves back at the main menu. Now for another full color experience, we'll go ahead and go back to the main menu here. Shift back again. And we'll see right here, rendering out the next logo quite nicely. Do a couple more, see if it'll let us. And you can see the performance is actually quite nice. Again, I'm not using any VDI accelerators on this particular installation or any of the installations that I'm going to show you. And there's our Apple logo. And notice here that it's properly restoring and pulling away the mouse pointer here so it doesn't corrupt the screen. Same thing for all menu options, same thing for all redraws. So there are some glitches that are still left, but I will be working through those as best I can here. So now you've kind of seen what this looks like in low resolution. We'll go ahead and kill this and disconnect for a moment. And we'll go out, and we'll see that it's restored the palette, ready for us to go to the next mode. Now for this, we'll simply switch preferences, switch to medium resolution, and with this we'll be able to look at a little bit more into the floppy here. Now, in addition to the Plato program, there is of course the resource file, and PLATOTERM also takes and creates a settings file too. Now we'll see here, we're going to be running in the medium resolution mode at 640 by 200 with 4 colors. You'll see that the font has resized itself appropriately. This is a hand-drawn font, just like the low-resolution font that's being rendered at 8 by 6. I still need to clean it up a little bit, but things to do. We'll go ahead and log back in so you can see the difference. And again, so far, not too much too differently. But you'll really start to see a difference as you start going through the main menu, for example. So far so good, we're not using that many colors. And even the Commodore logo fits just underneath the 4-color limit that's used in the medium resolution mode. But you'll start to see, like here for example, we ran out of colors for the next logo here, so it simply decided not to draw those colors. If anybody thinks of a better behavior, please let me know. Going a bit further, we can go back in as a counterpoint. We can go directly back to the Atari ST notes file, if we know the name, in this case Atari ST. And we can see the notes display is a little bit different. We run out of colors, but still readable, just fine. And again, readable, just nice and easy, easy peasy. Very nicely done. And even with certain games, for example, we'll take, just as a counterpoint, let's go ahead and go to Moria, for example, and we'll render the title page. You can see right here, wait one moment as it renders the character set, and you can actually see the mouse cursor blink as it's downloading the character set. We'll go ahead, shift back to the title page. And you can see right here that we still have enough colors here to accurately render the Moria title page just fine. looking good. So all in all, even medium resolution is still a decent graphics mode to do to connect to IRATA Online with. All good. We'll go ahead and exit out. And we will go ahead, exit the terminal, come back to Gem, and this time I'm actually going to go into the emulator real quick to set the monitor type to mono. So that we can do this part of the demo here to run in 640 by 400 in monochrome mode. Now with this one you will notice that the font legibility is much higher because it's an 8 by 12 font being rendered onto a 640 by 400 display. It's not quite the same scale as the Plato font, which is an 8 by 16 font, but it still looks absolutely fantastic. As you can see right there, looking good. And again, this is a 520 ST with 512K of memory, and it is just sitting here running this like a champ at 9600 bits per second. There was a lot of work that had to go through to make this actually happen, and a big amount of that was me actually understanding the interactions of VDI and AES and what exactly I could get away with doing direct rendering. In the case of the full screen text modes, what's actually happening here is that it is drawing a window on top, and then I take and carefully send direct VDI rendering over the top of the window, being absolutely sure to call wind update at the right time so that AES doesn't corrupt the display. But more importantly, I do this in accordance with the terminal buffer that I come in, so that I'm not constantly taking and passing the AES token back and forth as I lock and unlock the window buffers. So this allows me to keep a pretty decent performance. Again, go ahead and look at the notes files here. Looking pretty good. And you'll notice that, yeah, certain graphics right here don't display because we simply don't have enough colors. Again, if anybody has a better idea of what to do here, perhaps use patterns, whatever, let me know. So again, we can look at that note again. And as you can see, nice and crisp. Looks absolutely beautiful. Plus, when you're in high resolution mode like this, certain games that have very high resolution character sets really pop out quite nicely, and a good example of this would be Mahjong, for example. We use the original character set because we have enough resolution to be able to display it. And coincidentally, this particular version of Mahjong was written by the same author who went on to write Shanghai for Activision. So, go ahead, play the turtle, and we'll see the Mahjong display. And as you can see right here, extremely legible. And again, all on a standard 520 ST. Now, moving on, we'll actually take up the ante a little bit. So now you've seen what's actually possible just on a bog standard 520 ST using the standard modes. And you can see that this application actually runs pretty well as a standard tasking TOS application. What next? Well, as it turns out, it runs pretty well under multitasking environments as well. A good example of this is Magic, for example. We can go ahead and go in, and I will load the configuration file for Magic, which will set a few things up for me automatically, notably the hard drive image. And in a few moments, we will have Magic up and running for us. We have Magic, and on the C drive inside of Magic here, we have my PLATOTERM. Let's go to it, sure. Same version as you saw on the 520 ST, except with the same binary. And now we're running on a 520 ST, and you can, Mega ST with 2 megs of RAM under Magic, and you can see right here, it's running just fine, just like a champ. Go ahead and go into public notes, and I'll just pick something. Pick note number 77, which is a note about whether or not IRATA will be getting older Dungeons and Dragons games that are present on systems like Cyber 1. Yeah, in short answer, we will. With that, we can go ahead now, for example, and I can flip over to something else entirely, Magic Desk, for example, and it will render just fine. Now, I need to improve the redraw algorithm ever so slightly. Primarily, I need to be able to draw new data as it comes into the buffer, not just when it takes and does the redraw. But you can see right here, it's doing just fine, and it's capturing data in the background as it works. I just need to take and hook up the rest of the machinery to take and display it as it comes through. When we retop the window, it will take and resume the buffer where we left off. I mean, as we can see, runs just like a champ under Magic, and runs quite nicely. And you can see some glitches here with the redraw, particularly here. This is happening because the fill command for this is actually way over here instead of over here. I need to find a way around this so that I can take and replicate the fill command appropriately. Anyway, so yeah, that's Magic. We'll go ahead and break out of here. Come back out, and we bounce out into Magic just like nothing ever happened. So, looking good so far. We have Magic, we have basic versions of TOS, and it's just hammering through quite nicely, and you've seen a smattering of different video modes. Now for contrast, we'll actually go ahead and launch a TTO30 and run this in the TTO30's medium resolution mode, which is 640 by 480 by 16 colors. For that, we go here. Go ahead, reset the machine. Of course, we need to do this, no problem. And while that's happening, I will switch the mode appropriately. As you can see here, TT with 4 megs of TT RAM. Right now, we're kind of in that low resolution mode here. Let me go ahead and flip that over. And with a little bit of help, we find ourselves back in Plato again. In 16 color, but 640 by 480, and you can really see the difference now. The font's even bigger, nice and crisp. Things really start to come into, really start to look nice and neat. So there we go. Now for this, I'm actually going to take and we'll do the Mahjong display again. Color. Original character set. Load the character set into place. A few moments. Go ahead, select game, play the turtle. Here we are with Mahjong in TT resolution mode. You can see even more definition to the characters this time. Everything just looks nice and crisp. Beautiful, no? So, with that, you have an idea now of the video modes that are possible, and finally I'll just go ahead and go back to the main menu so you can see some of the displays rendered in full resolution here. Different logos, different systems, and yes, they are all randomly picked. Hopefully we'll get the Apple logo here in just a moment. Get away from the TI logo here, because it's shown that several times now. The IBM logo. And again, even with the TTO30, you'll notice that I'm not using NVDI at all. This is without a display accelerator. With a display accelerator, since I'm using standard VDI calls, the display goes even faster. So if you've got the memory, you can use it, and you can gain better performance out of it even, but you don't even need it. I've tried to spend as much time as I possibly can to really to get all the performance that I need out of it. So now here we go, that's the TT mode, and finally we'll go ahead and exit this particular mode here. And we will go into TT Mono finally. This particular one, I actually saved to run under Geneva, so you can actually see this not only running in TT Mono, but also running under Geneva and NeoDesk. Go ahead, reset the machine. And while this is coming up, wait for our desktop to come up, and as I copied the environment over, it didn't copy over the configuration file to start NeoDesk for whatever reason, so I have to start it manually, no big deal. So with that, we'll go ahead, go over to the floppy drive again, just like before. Well, actually, yeah. Go back over the floppy drive just like before, and launch a copy of PLATOTERM. And as we can see here, if you have the resolution, it will take and open up in a window of its own, and it actually behaves quite nicely. So if I take and do something over here, no problem, it doesn't draw over into it. I come back. If it needs to, it redraws the whole thing, otherwise it takes and only draws a section. Again, we connect, and now because we're using a 512 by 512 pixel window, we actually get access to the full 8x16 Plato font. One thing that you noticed here in the TT Mono mode, of course, the palette registers aren't accessible, so it just keeps the colors as they are. And as we can see, right there, doing great. We can go ahead and go play a game of Moria, do whatever we want to do. Everything just looks nice and crisp and neat. Give it a moment here to stop loading, and we'll look at the title screen. Now, the title screens for these particular games were actually drawn in the interactive screen designer that's actually a part of the tutor development environment on IRATA.ONLINE, so even artists can get in on the fun. So I can go over here, do something else, and the display will take and behave quite nicely. It has no problem taking and redrawing it for refreshing itself, replaying back from the terminal buffer to reconstruct as it needs to. The next step, as I said before, will be to take and dynamically update as new data comes around to only draw parts of the window that are not included here. That's actually going to be an interesting challenge. But it's going to be worth doing because it's going to allow this to multitask quite nice and neatly. Currently, the only environment that that PLATOTERM can't come up in currently, for whatever reason, is Mint, and I am trying to figure out why that's the case. As soon as I do, it will come up in Mint too. But I wanted to kind of show you that it works pretty much everywhere else except for Mint right now. And it works quite nicely. And it behaves just fine, taking and bouncing things around, no problem, etc. So there you go. I mean, this is where I'm at right now. Thus far, I would say that the Atari ST PLATOTERM is about 80% complete, maybe 90. Still a lot of little things to do, but I hope to get that wrapped up in the next week or two, at worst. And then I will take and do a testing release so you guys can test it. I want to thank you guys for staying this long. I hope you guys enjoyed the content here. I hope it was informative. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't signed up for an IRATA.ONLINE account, please do so. IRATA.ONLINE. Click the big pink sign up button. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact the IRATA.ONLINE company on Facebook. Leave a message. And with that, I think we'll call this guy done. Thank you guys so much for watching.